In this video, we're going to go over a custom GPT that a colleague of mine built to enhance our ability to build quality healthcare simulations. So I'd like to go ahead and acknowledge her, Kelly Foltz-Ramos. She's the Director of Simulation and Innovation at the University of Buffalo School of Nursing, and in my opinion, a fantastic simulation guru to be able to go to whenever you had any questions pertaining to simulation. And so, I'm very lucky to have her as a colleague. This is the GPT link that takes you to the custom GPT that she built. We're going to use it in just a second, but I wanted to note all of the fantastic things that she has built in to this GPT. And so, like I said before, she is a simulation guru. And so, these things are all very significant in that landscape. I'll be honest, I don't know what the heck a lot of these things are, but these are sort of the essential frameworks and standards and guidelines that you want to use when considering best practices around healthcare simulation. So let's talk about how, I came to become aware of this GPT tool and how we used it in our education. So I'm a director of interprofessional education within my pharmacy school, and I'm part of a larger leadership group within the university, and we meet periodically to review and revise and adjust IPE programming that we have. So we were meeting as a group to revamp one of the simulations that we use as part of our Team Steps program. Team Steps is, for those of you that aren't aware, it's a training program to help folks in healthcare enhance their communication and their leadership and their team building skills. And so with it comes a toolkit with all these various tools that you can use to help you in different situations, especially, situations that have a lot of conflict in them, stress, to, better improve patient outcomes. And also to, help providers, maintain their own wellness and whatnot. So this is part of an IPE program that we offer at our university. And so in this meeting where we were talking about, how best to revamp some of the simulations that are part of this program, we were talking about a long-term care scenario. And so, on this group, we had, leaders from the various health professions, and we spent about 30 minutes debating the best way to change this scenario. So this was a long-term care scenario, and it was felt that there just wasn't really enough conflict in it, that it felt forced, that the students were kind of just reading from their one-page descriptions in the simulation. And so, we were kind of going back and forth and not really getting anywhere super productive on how best to change this simulation. So that was when Dr. Foltz-Ramos chimed in and said, hey guys, you know what, I have an idea. I built this custom GPT for simulation creation. Let's try using it. And so that's what we did. So this was the prompt that we used. So I'm just going to grab this and throw it in to the GPT. So we asked it to create an interprofessional simulation scenario based on team steps in a long-term care setting using the following professions: OT, PT, PA, dietetics, pharmacy, and nursing, because those were all the programs that we knew were going to be participating in the simulation. There will be a standardized patient or standardized participant who can introduce conflict. Team Steps tools to trigger are SBAR, check back to challenge rule, CUS. And we mentioned that you can, that other tools from Team Steps could be used in the simulation. And as I said before, the Team Steps toolkit includes lots of different communication tools. And so these are just some of those tools for those of you that aren't familiar with Team Steps. Please also give a script for the standardized patient or standardized participant and an intro page to give each profession, introducing them to the scenario before they enter the simulation room. All right, so let's go ahead and fire that off. All right, so we're down to an intro page for the profession. So this is what the RN intro page would look like. So this is like what the students are handed as they're walking into the simulation to orient them briefly to what they're going to do in the simulation. It doesn't usually give a lot of detail because obviously part of the simulation is sort of like working through something unknown. But it's, you know, enough to sort of orient the students to what's going to happen. Okay, and then we've got our standardized patient script. Giving them some direction, you know, like pushing back gently but persistently. You know, that might be something that if like I were writing a standardized patient script, I might not put in there. I might be picturing it in my head, but I might forget that I should give that kind of instruction around like the demeanor that the patient should have. Okay, and then, you know, again, kind of telling the patient like when to sort of, you know, ease up and to let that conflict go a bit, which I think is helpful again to, you know, orient your standardized patient or participant who's usually like an actor, at least in our case, or, you know, you may be using like TAs or whatnot. So this helps them have an idea of how they should be acting. Okay, this gives you an outline of the progression of the simulation. And so this is coming out with a 20-minute simulation. I didn't ask it for a specific time. I could have. Our simulations are often a little bit shorter. We usually keep them to about 12 minutes. So, you know, I could go back and ask it to fit this into a 12-minute increment instead of a 20 as we see here. Okay. We can get a summary of our facilitator guide here. We can ask for a more detailed guide. Okay, some debriefing instruction, right? So, you know, leading a debrief after simulation can be challenging to allow for students to really be, you know, simulation participants to really be the driver of that debrief and not as the facilitator to sort of take over that conversation. So here's some suggested prompts that the debriefer could ask the participants after they're done with the simulation. Okay. And then here's some other things that, you know, it can do if you would like. So let's ask it to all right, let's see if it'll generate the rest of them. Okay, so now we've got one for OT. One for PT. And looking at these one-pagers, you know, the team steps tools expected to use, I would probably remove that. You know, this is obviously meant to kind of give you like a framework of where to start. But, you know, for our purposes in the simulation, we want the students, the simulation participants, to determine what team steps tools might be best to use. And then we talk about that in the debrief. So I would probably remove that team steps tool section from each of the intro pages. But the rest at the top, you know, that's all looking pretty good. The PA one looks good. Here's dietetics. Here's pharmacist role. Okay. And then, a summary table, which is kind of cool to have in there too. All right. So this is just an introduction to this tool. Like I said, I just became aware of it today on a interprofessional education leadership meeting, and I thought it looked pretty cool. So, thank you to Dr. Foltz-Ramos for being willing to share this with us, and hopefully this can benefit others in their work.